So this has really been a huge education piece for me, and I want to learn more and figure out how we can better inform and educate each other. So I think we'll just move to questions. So folks can feel free to, raise your hand or unmute yourself if you have a question. Throw something in the chat. We're monitoring that, and I'll just kick off with one while people are thinking about their questions. Can you guys talk a little bit about rural communities that have taken action? I know that there are a couple communities in greater Minnesota that have taken some action around menthol. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Erin, do you want to talk about your area of the state?
Sure. So Mankato has definitely led the way. I would actually say that Mankato, Duluth, the metro area have generally led the way in tobacco policy. And largely that is because that's where we have folks on the ground doing the work, that it is not easy to pass tobacco policies. Back in our smoke-free indoor air days, we received death threats. I mean, it was very contentious. It was uncomfortable. So Mankato has taken action. The Moorhead area tends to be working on policy, and a few, Rochester is often working on policy. They've got interesting political dynamics that can make policies difficult there. But Liz, I'm not super familiar with which communities are working specifically on menthol right now.
I'm not sure specifically about menthol, but I will say that between like Moorhead and Duluth and Benton County and Mankato, North Mankato, these local policies have started to add up, and it adds up to over a quarter of Minnesotans already live in a community that has passed some sort of restriction on the sale of flavored or menthol tobacco. And I think Winona, Helen, is there anything there yet?
Yeah, just tell everybody, I just shared a photograph of some students from Winona High School and Winona Middle School. We went up on the bus up to Minnesota to meet our representatives. So I know, looking at the PowerPoint and everything, we all feel a bit, ugh. But actually there is some amazing work going on, and our youth are really driving it. To hear them speaking to Miller and Pulowski about flavored tobacco, funding, jewels. They know all this stuff. And they were, even the 7th graders put their hands up to talk and say what they're seeing. And so think that even though we feel worried and sad and anxious about it, they said, well, they'll never stop smoking in bars. They'll never get people, under 21. It's all of those things, and yet we did it. So we just have to have heart and keep it going and encourage our youth to speak up, because we've got a long way to go, but we're definitely getting there. So. Yeah. Even in Southeast Minnesota, we're there with you, absolutely.
And I'll just add, I myself was with a group of young people from the Iron Range at Day at the Capitol, Minnesota's first smoke-free generation Day at the Capitol. I want to say 5 or 6 years ago, and their representative, we went in to meet, and they told their stories, and they planned what they were going to say on the bus ride down, and they told him the stories, and they said, we want you to sign on to this bill. And then they did what they had learned earlier in the day, was to just be silent and wait for an answer. and he's like, I just, he tried to change the subject. He did all the typical things that happen. And then in the end, one of them said, but you still haven't answered our question. We want you to sign on to this. Will you sign on to it? And he's like, okay, fine. But this was somebody who was in the like firmly no category, you know, but it's just amazing. And I heard another story from just this year was a fourth grader spoke up at her meeting with a group. I can't remember. I think they maybe were from the Alexandria area. And she said, and they said, you know, legislator said, you know, I'm not just with you. And this fourth grader finally piped up and she said, but I'm afraid to go to the bathroom when I'm at school. And then it was like, okay. Like they just, you know, that it's like they just make things real. And it's very fun to work with young people and raising their voices. And it's actually very powerful, you know, very powerful advocates.
I love it. Alexis, do you want to ask your question? I saw you throw one in the chat.
Sure. I'm just wondering, how has your experience been unique in specifically being a woman leading in this issue? And like, I want to know, what are like the gender dynamics involved in terms of like advertising of these products and both also use of these products?
Well, I would say that this, like, it's like a lot of things, but the coalition is 54 organizations. At any time where I'm at a meeting where there's one or two screens of people, only ever see one or two men, you know, in this public health advocacy arena. And I'm not sure what I can say about that. But then you go to the legislature and then tables turned, right? So we're definitely, and especially rural women, we're just woefully underrepresented on county commissions and at the state legislature and in the seats of power. You know, we're speaking our truth to power a lot, but we need to start sitting in those seats of power and wielding some authority on these issues, because I was trained by a woman when I was much younger. Her name is Marie Wilson, and she said, you know, we're leading from the foot of the table. And because we've had this long history of leading from the foot of the table, which means you're at the meeting, you're making sure everything's happening, you're helping get the work done, but there's always some guy that's taking the credit for the group, whatever it is. Often this is the case. And she said, but those skills that we build in relationships and communications and rearing children and taking care of, you know, healthcare, those are exactly the skills that our elected, our government needs more than anything right now. I mean, it couldn't be screaming more loudly that more women need to get into places of elected power. And so if anybody's thinking about running for office, you know, call.
Erin, did you have any comments?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
So one of the things I want to say is that the tobacco industry is not gender specific. I think back in the day, it was really geared towards the Marlboro man, guys like my dad who wanted to be cool. My mom, when she had me, her doctor told her that she should consider smoking so she could lose baby weight. And so I think that even back in the 70s, the tobacco industry was thinking about women, and women were on their mind. They had the men and now they wanted the women. And part of women's liberation was I could go buy myself some cigarettes and I can smoke. Mm-hmm. And then now, you know, one of the packs of cigarettes that I used to carry with me when I was giving presentations, it was Virginia Slims. And it was a tiny little box that looked like a lipstick container. And they were these teeny tiny, the most slender, skinnier than just a little bigger than like a coffee straw. They were just these beautiful, slender dainty cigarettes. And
Were they
that
pink?
was, they were not, I did have a box of pink cigarettes. They were pink with gold. So they were, that was 5 years ago, you know, that they're targeting women in that way. I think vape changes everything because there isn't gender in vape. It's for everyone. As a woman advocate, there were definitely times where I was fearful. And I know that men were trying to intimidate me. I was being talked down to. There were instances where I was escorted to my car because other men in the group were concerned for my safety because of the way men were acting towards me. I think that the voice of addiction is so very loud. Folks who are experiencing addiction are scared. It is scary. Those are really real feelings, and it comes out in some really ugly ways.
Thanks so much, Erin. Those are tough things. I have two more questions, and then we'll sort of move to, if you're interested, how you can get involved and support. So one question is, who owns these tobacco companies? Do the tobacco companies own the vape companies? Pardon me. And the second one is, what kind of resources does the American Lung Association offer for people? So I'll just throw those two out, and then we'll move to how you can get involved if you'd like.
Erin, do you know, can you rattle them off? I know, you know,
I can't rattle them off.
Altria.
Yeah. I can't
Is
rattle
it
them
usual
off anymore.
suspects? Is it the big
is.
tobacco companies? Yeah, that
Yes.
own the
Big
vape
tobacco, but
companies.
you know, what's interesting is that, you know, Juul was basically, they put an emergency brakes on Juul. And what Juul did was sell the technology. They closed, but they sold the technology to Altria. So it's like
Okay.
they're always finding their way around, like, oh, we're only getting 3% of young smokers. How do we get that? I mean, it's like, so it's always, it's just amazing, this Juul trial that started, and their opening statement from Juul Corporation was that, how dare Minnesotans come after them because they're the most successful tobacco cessation device ever invented. That was their statement that they released yesterday. And it could not be a more bold-faced, crazy lie. I mean, it just could not be more. If they wanted to be a cessation device, all they have to do is go file to be a cessation device, and they can be one. But they know they're not. But that's how they play this game. I mean, money it's big money, and I don't know what to say. I don't even remember what the question was.
Take it to the Google, because tobacco industry owns, of course, cigarette companies, vape companies, but they also own a lot of things that we're all using every day, Kraft macaroni and cheese. And so take it to the Google so you can be informed as to what they own and what ways we all might be supporting them.
Great. Thanks, Erin. And then the last question was, what kind of resources does the American Lung Association offer for people?
Well, American Lung Association works on a lot of different fronts, really anything that has to do with clean air. So they're doing work on everything from vaping to electric cars. You know, they're just really, they're a big, powerful, awesome group of public health folks working on many different levels. And this is just one piece of the policy advocacy that they're working on. And we do have some resources available if you want to try and organize, you know, we can sponsor a educational event, we can do a webinar, we can do some things in rural communities, then email me, and I can talk to you more about what you might want to do in your community along those lines. And then, you know, they do the cessation work. Just go to American Lung on Google and you'll kind of be astounded by all the resources and cessation prevention.
And we'll share all the links today. We'll share everything from the webinar that will be shared on our website with a follow-up email. So we'll share all of that. You know, I know we've had a lot in the chat today, and I know, Liz, if we can move to, you know, if people are interested in this, how can they get involved? What can they do? So maybe move to that, and then we'll move to close and make sure we wrap it up. Thank you so much.
So this year, there's some legislation moving forward. There's 2 pieces of legislation currently that are still alive for this session and headed for vote. So you can contact your legislator, you can write a letter. You can write a letter to the editor. I'll gladly help anybody that wants to write a letter to the editor in your community to get published on the importance of this issue. But the 2 pieces of legislation, one is to make sure that folks who are living low income on Medicare, Medicaid have access to cessation help. And so making sure that those resources stay available. And then second is the work that's being done to say that any money that is won from this tobacco trial or any tobacco trial moving forward will be funneled into cessation and prevention. Because it doesn't mean it goes in, generally goes to the general fund, and we'd like to see it earmarked for when it's won, that it's going to go help, you know, address the damage that's been done with the people that were damaged or harmed by the product. And then next year we'll continue, and we'll be working on this all summer, fall, and next winter, is to finally end the sale of flavored tobacco products in Minnesota. And, you know, some people find it unimaginable, but it's like every single other issue that's been won. It's like we've laid the groundwork. We've got some, you know, over 25% of communities are used to the idea because they passed local ordinances, and now we're taking it to the state. The coalition is growing. So if you know a group that wants to learn more or join the coalition or do an activity in your community, we're there to help you do that. And always hoping that you'll raise your voice and speak, you know, truth to power. Call your legislators.
I love it. Well, thank you. I know that we're winding down on time. Any last comments, Erin, that you'd like to make, and Liz, before we go to close?
You know, back in the day when we were working on smoke-free indoor air, we had a city council member who was just livid. He was so upset because he'd gotten so many calls over the weekend. He just came into council meeting fired up. And I thought, my gosh, all of our people must have called. And he finally said the number of how many people called: 25 people. That's it. That's all it took to get him fired up.
Right.
It was a pivotal moment for me because that's it. 25. And I think a lot of times we get stuck in this, like, I'm just one person. What could I do? My call won't matter. You just have to be one of 25 and you can change policy.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Liz, do you have anything before we move to close?
Well, no, but I just want to say that, Teresa, thank you for this opportunity. And 100 Rural Women is just totally awesome. I've seen your webinars before and participate in them again. And I just, everywhere I go and somebody mentions 100 Rural Women, they're like, that group is so awesome. So thank you for having us.
Well, thank you. We're just what an opportunity for us to be able to lift you guys up and to talk about the work that you're doing around these important issues. And I just want to thank everybody and remind you that really what we're all about is creating connections and inspiring leadership. And I'll tell you what, these two, Erin and Liz, are amazing leaders and amazing models of leadership for our community. So thank you so much for everything.